Hello and welcome to Biz Talk. I am Danish Manzoor. And today we are going to talk about startups, but the most important part for every startup is to raise funds. And who better to discuss about fundraising and the issues which go about it than to talk to somebody who manages a fund. We have with us today Dr. Vivek Mansingh, the general partner of Your Nest, an early stage VC fund. Dr. Singh, welcome to our show. Before we get into the whole business of funding and how it works in India especially, let's talk a little bit about you. I believe you're somebody who has had the opportunity to work with some of the great guns of the IT industry as well, which includes Mr. Steve Jobs as well. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get into the show.
So my background is engineering degree, then PhD, and then I worked for 17 years in Silicon Valley, and then last 17 years in India, so almost 35 years of career. And I was very fortunate to work with people like you said, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, John Chambers, David Packard, and Bill Hewlett. And these are all phenomenal people, phenomenal makers of our digital world as we know it today. So learned a lot, and these are obviously the big names. I was fortunate to work with many other great people in India as well as in USA, so learned a lot from them, and that is the approach I bring to the venture capital industry. So I'm not a traditional venture capital person. I come from hardcore operating background. I have 6 patents myself. I have written books, etc. So I'm a hardcore technology guy.
Somebody who's been there, done that.
Been there, done that. Several of my companies have exited also. So I bring all of that experience. Another unique thing is that I have not only done technology, but general management, buying companies, selling companies, sales, marketing. And the reason I'm saying that is all this I did very intentionally to prepare for my own entrepreneurship.
Right.
Because when you are an entrepreneur, you don't need one skill, you actually need a basket of skills. Right. And that is a lesson I want to share with the budding entrepreneurs, that try to expose yourself to sales, marketing, technology, and all kinds of things that you can, so that you have a basket of skills ready. And when you need it, you can just pick the right tool and apply it.
Absolutely. Now, talking about your fund, tell us more about Your Nest as an early stage investor in terms of companies. How was your experience in India being so far?
So India, I was, when I moved to India in 2000, I worked with 2 startups, US-India startups. One was bought by Philips, one was bought by Oracle. After that, Michael roped me into building Dell, and then Cisco, John Chambers and company. After that, I started funding my company. So I am a big company guy as well as a small company guy. And then I became a fund person. So all 360 degrees. Here is my experience. The challenge I see in India is that typical entrepreneur in India is little less mature compared to Silicon Valley. And there is nothing wrong in it. This is how it is. Silicon Valley has had this entrepreneurship journey 50, 100 years back. India started 10, 20 years back, so it's a normal thing. Because of that, because of lack of exposure, lack of depth in technology or other areas, in India, the startups are, I should say, little less mature than in the West, Israel or US if you compare them there. So what is the need? There is nothing wrong with that. They have a lot of energy, they have a lot of passion, they are very excited about changing the world. All of that is common. What they need is some adult supervision, somebody who has been there, done that before, guidance from them, a mentor and a coach who can tell them what they don't want to hear, and guide them through. So my journey through this 17 years in India is that if we can provide that as a venture capital fund, I think we can make a significant impact.
But won't that affect your bandwidth as a fund manager? Because if you're spending too much time on trying to nurture your startup.
Very fair point. So now let me tell you Your Nest, how we differentiate Your Nest, and I'll answer your questions in a minute. So Your Nest is a pre-series A, early stage fund. We typically get involved at the stage where the pilot is done. So you have some 2 or 3 or 5 paying customers. So your product need is already established, and you have a technology and a pitch which shows that you can build a good size business. what do we bring to the table? And why did I actually choose Your Nest? Is that mentoring piece. We want to help these young budding entrepreneurs to actually take the company to the next level. So not every company we fund requires that help. And also, even if a company requires that help, it is not required forever. It is in certain stages of the company that we need to get involved. So it doesn't affect our bandwidth that way. We only fund or want to fund, let's say, 4 to 6 companies in a year. Your Nest has 4 full-time partners and 1 technology director. So 5 of us are there. So even if we do 1 company every 6 months or in a year, we have bandwidth to do it. We are structuring ourselves to be able to do that. And that is the need of the hour in India.
Tell me some of your investments so far in India, especially, which you're proud of.
Yeah. So I'll talk about Your Nest Fund 1, which was a 90 crore fund. They made 16 investments. I was not part of it. I became part of Your Nest through one of those investments which I made a personal investment of. But keep that aside for now. So 16 investments we did. 11 of those have gone through higher rounds of funding. We are tracking to an IRR of 27+% already. But these investments have been in play for 2.5, 3 years. So we don't have exit yet. But some good things are happening. For example, I'll give you 2-3 companies that we are very proud of. One company is in speech technology called Unifor. Came out of IIT Chennai, doing extremely well. And just as a high point, John Chambers, when he was here about a month and a half back, he made a personal investment of close to $2 million in that company.
I believe you have something to do with it.
Well, it helps to know John, but the company deserved it, so I cannot take credit for it. Company deserved it. John knew. So that's a great company. For John to make an investment in India, a solo investment in India, and that is first one, it's an amazing thing. And Unifor has a solid technology in the speech area, which is going to be very relevant. We believe it could be a very large company, global company from India. So that's company 1. Let me take the company 2. It's an IoT company, wearable technology company, Kaha Technologies, that we got involved with early, and now they are creating watches which are smart, some safety oriented, some health oriented, solid IoT, solid technology, China, India presence. And they have a contract with an Indian watch company already to supply them 1 million watches. So significant traction, and now this company is expanding to the.
Are they manufacturing?
They are not manufacturing here, but they are manufacturing. Well, software is all here, hardware is China, and they are marrying it together to give this machinery to the partners. They are now expanding in Switzerland. So. Great success story there. I can keep on, but if you want one or two more.
Tell me one thing.
Yes.
Success stories are very easy to find in the current market.
Yes.
But most learnings, what we have seen in business, happen through the failures of most companies. What do you think ends up as failure? Which kind of startups end up as failure? And tell me some examples if you have, especially with your investments.
So, see. Even a successful company has to learn every day. I'm a big, fan of that. So I say evolve every day and learn every day and make sure your company is sort of going in the right path. Now, failure. Typically in our Fund 1 and in India, the failure happens because 1, the startup founders are struggling to scale the company. Scaling to be a global company, scaling to be a big company. That's where
they're stretching themselves to.
Second, and even more important probably, I'm a big believer that a startup should know differentiated value proposition. It sounds so obvious. Differentiated value proposition. I am just coining this word and making it mainstream so that new entrepreneurs start thinking about these words, differentiated value proposition. To know differentiated value proposition, you would agree with me that you need to know all the competitive landscape. Without knowing that, how do you know your value proposition is differentiated? I find that is a big problem. I think people do competitive analysis, but not to the extent that they should. 99 out of 100 companies that I meet, I find that they haven't done their homework before. So their value proposition sometimes is not as unique as it should be, and then they struggle to scale the company, they sometimes struggle to raise the funds.
That's a very interesting thing which you just mentioned over here. And we have often seen most of the startups which have come up in India, they usually try to copy paste the models which work in the US and copy paste them in India without understanding that the demographics over there are different, the subscribers over there are different, it may or may not work in India. Is that the right approach to do?
So that is one of the approach that has worked in certain cases. So even if you look at the Chinese big companies, they are all cut and paste of many US companies, right? Even India's Naukri.com or Shadi.com or travel sites and all that. So there is no harm, or even Flipkart if you take, right? No harm if you take the concept, apply it like you rightly said to the local environment, and do some unique things where the value proposition again is very unique. No harm in that. But that cannot be true for every company. There's some number of companies you can do where you can copy a food company, an Ola, or fine. So nothing wrong. I don't want to belittle them in any way. They have done absolutely amazing job for Flipkart to be able to compete with Amazon, or for Ola with Uber and so on. They have done an amazing job. So that is one model. China has done very well as well there. But that cannot be the end of the story. I think there are a whole slew of companies in the new technology areas that are coming, SaaS for example, IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning. These are massive global areas, and you will see from India in the next 5 to 10 years, some decent number of companies coming who will actually be very individualistic, very innovative with their own IP. But it has to be there for you to be able to build a global company. The cut and paste will not take you too far. There's so many companies you can build that.
Right. So, Mr. Vivek, there's one more issue in this whole thing that we're discussing. We've seen the pattern of companies, VCs who have invested in startups in India over the past few years. And when I speak to these startup founders, most of them say that the VCs expect them to scale up immediately. If you're an app, your monthly active users have to be this many, and then come talk to us. But not a single VC puts the focus on how cash rich you are, how your cash flows are, how you plan to get profitable in the years to come. Why is that so?
So it's a excellent question to begin with. VCs are there they have their own clients. People have given them money, and they give them money for 7 years, and they expect the money to be returned after 7 years with 3x, 5x, 10x return, right? So VCs will have to look for businesses that can give them a 10x, 20x, 30x exit in 5 to 7 years. They don't have actually time of 10 years. So how do you manage it? Here is the advice.
If you're not profitable, how do you get
So let me tell you, there's certain businesses that have to be profitable to scale. For certain businesses, growth is more important than profit. So it depends on what kind of business you are in. I'm an old-fashioned guy, so I would prefer profitability in many companies, but not at the cost of growth. So you have to balance growth and profitability. You have to manage. Depending on the business, both may be important, one or the other could be important. Now the point you asked, so how do entrepreneurs deal with it? Because any VC you go, we are pre-series A, right? So we get involved first. We even want 7 years. So 7 years, if we want 10x or 20x or 30x return, you have to go Series A after we fund, Series B, maybe even Series C when we can exit and give return to our stakeholders. Now, so I have my hands tied as well. I cannot wait for 15 years for them to scale. So here is my advice to the entrepreneurs. do not go to VC too early. Go to VC when you need money to scale. Then you will get traction from VCs. So when you are on the curve going up in revenue, profitability, scaling, that is the time to go to VC. So what do you do before that? Well, first, friends and family round. Second, go to angels. And come to a stage where you have done pilots, you know what works, you have a working product or a business model, and you are ready to scale. Then if you go to VCs will be happy and you will be happy.
So that's quite interesting what you just said. In the past 1 year, what we have seen, Dr. Vivek, that the whole early stage of funding in India has taken a dip. Why is that, and what do you think is going to be the future for early stage investors in India?
Yeah, like any other industry, it's a cyclical industry. You know, like stock market, there's euphoria, and then after that correction, and then again euphoria. So I think 2015 year we had a little too much excitement on funding side, and we are just correcting. So if you take 1 or 2 years, even from stock market, if you take those euphoric years out, you will see actually that it is going up over a long period of time. I think the same is true for startups. Yes, we have taken a hit compared to 2015 numbers, but it's a healthy hit. And now the startups are getting more mature. People are getting more realistic sort of money for funding, and valuations are also more realistic. So I think this is healthy correction, and I don't think this stops the show. I think this will make our industry healthy, and we'll continue on this path. I believe that our startup ecosystem, which is in top 5 in the world, will continue to remain in top 5, and it will only go up in ranking, not down.
Wonderful. So when you invest in a startup, how important is the track record of the entrepreneurs in question over here for you when you invest in them?
Yeah, excellent question. So see, I equate startup journey to going to Mount Everest. Okay, oxygen is very limited when you get there, and 9 out of 10 people will somehow fall back somewhere. If you have gone to Mount Everest one earlier time, wouldn't you want that person to be your partner when you go to the next to Mount Everest the next time? Obviously you will. So we value it. If person has done even an unsuccessful startup, which can be quantified why it failed, and many fail for various reasons, it is considered a positive experience. Having said that, it's not true that new or first time entrepreneurs are in any way bad. I think my request and advice to the first time entrepreneurs is find a mentor who has been there, done that before. Now in India, there are a lot of armchair mentors who are teaching swimming to you without themselves knowing swimming. I believe that swimming cannot be taught by someone who does not know how to swim.
True.
Similarly, for my request for startups and the entrepreneurs is to find one mentor. They could have multiple mentors. One HR mentor could be there, one finance mentor could be there. But at least one mentor should be there who has done it before. And with that, I think we will give not equal chance, but similar chance to a startup person or an entrepreneur who hasn't done it before. It's not a showstopper, and many of our startups are from the first time entrepreneurs.
Now, since we're talking about startups, a lot of our viewers are themselves youngsters right now. Some of them are in colleges, they want to have their own startup, they have these bundles of ideas, but don't know how to go about it and what is the right thing to do. Could you lay out a basic, clear process for them in case they want to put their companies out there and expect funding from them?
Excellent question, and this is very pertinent, not just for college going people, but anybody who wants to start a business, right? So, and I do get requests from these college graduates, etc., all the time. So first thing I do is encourage the idea, first of all. My request to entrepreneur as well as to the people surrounding him or her, professors, or encourage the idea. Having said that, first thing I ask them to create a business plan. They may not have done it before, it doesn't matter. There are enough examples on the internet. They can learn go to the YouTube and learn from top 10 people how to create a business plan. create a business plan. Numbers are not important for me from this young entrepreneur, but the idea is. Now, in that, what I look for most is competitive analysis. I'm going back to my earlier point. Why do you have a unique value proposition? So do you know what the landscape is? Who are you competing with? What do you bring to the table? Just the cheaper version. A lot of Indian startups are, we do the same but we are cheaper than a company in US or a company in UK. That is not good enough value proposition. There has to be some more meat into it. So my request to those people is create a business plan. Then work with a professor if you are at a college who is interested in entrepreneurship. Many of these colleges have now incubators. You become part of that incubator. And then go, if you are out of college, and let's say you are working for one of the companies and want to go through the same journey, still I'll say create your business plan. Go to an incubator that is outside the college. There are a bunch of them. Start there. That's the best hand-holding way. They will help you, mentor you, coach you, and then you approach the VCs and take your journey forward.
Now, what do you think the trends that you're monitoring in the industry right now in terms of investments in India, are they on a decline in the days to come, or are the investments coming in more and more as the time progresses from the outside world towards India?
No, it is increasing. If you look at the total capital available in India over the last few years, it has doubled. Now we are putting 10 to 12 billion dollar investments in the startup world. A lot of that goes in few selected top companies, but even otherwise, if you take, generally there are about 500 pre-series A startups in India. Total 1,000, just big numbers, high level, 1,000 startups, 500 of them are pre-series A. The money available to them is $300 to $500 million. That is good enough. We don't actually need more money. If people say that I'm not getting funded, they should look at their own plan and value proposition rather than saying that I'm not getting funded, and take some feedback from their mentors or VCs or incubator people or professor and understand and address those problems. If you have a decent proposition, you have money. And it will continue to increase, and number of startups will continue to increase from India, and I think the total value of startup will continue to go up for the next 10-20 years.
On that point, on that note, what you mentioned, that investments are going to increase, it's growing. Do you have a feeling that this is a bubble right now? That there's so much investment coming up, there are so many failed startups as well at the same time in India, right? So this money is coming in. The bubble is growing. Do you fear that there's going to be a time in India, and be very frank with me,
yes,
say that.
Yes, I'm a black and white guy.
Right? Do you fear that there's going to be a startup bubble burst in the days to come?
So the bubble will keep bursting and it will keep becoming bigger. I wouldn't call it a bubble. I think it's just like a stock market, right? So every few years there is a correction. Does that mean stock are out of fashion or companies? It's based on the real earnings. In the end, it is based on the real earnings that the business produces, and your stock market keeps on going up, right? Similarly here, the startup quality, there will be enough failures. So I always say, if there are 10,000 startups, probably 8,500 or 9,000 will fail. It's not a failure, it's a healthy process in itself. Nothing wrong. Some of these people will start a successful company later. So I do not
join an already successful company and add
value to it, right? So nothing wrong. So this failure rate will continue to go high when the number of startups go high, but overall, more money it will attract, more value it will create, and more successful startups will come out of India.
Dr. Vivek, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we had with us Dr. Vivek Mansingh from Your Nest, an early stage VC fund today. I'm sure you must have enjoyed today's show. And in case you missed out on some advice, you can always rewind the show and go back and listen to whatever Dr. Vivek over here had to say about startups, about funding, and how to go about it. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be back with you next week. Till then, do take good care of yourselves.